welcome back to our shared read of The Boy Who Grew Dragons by Andy Shepherd. Now, we're getting quite a ways through it, aren't we? If you've not had a chance to catch up yet, then I'll post some links in the description below to the first instalment and the last instalment so that you can catch up. But it's all getting very exciting. Tomas has found his dragon. He's had a little bit of trouble with him. Poo accidents and scorch marks and lots of mess. But he's finally named him Flicker. He's just gone back to school and has left Flicker home alone. Let's see what's going to happen. Chapter 10. Why you should never keep a dragon in your rucksack. I'm not known for my brilliant concentration in class. In fact, Miss Logan has repeatedly said she wishes there was an Olympic medal for daydreaming because I'd win gold. By the time I'd absent-mindedly glued Amira's sleeve to the table and painted stripes across Seb's left hand, it wasn't just Miss Logan raising her eyebrows. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't stop thinking about what Flicker was doing and if I'd been right to leave him home alone. It was then that I noticed Ted's nose wrinkling. He leaned closer. Was he smelling me? I edged away, giving my arm a sniff and scanning my clothes, wondering if I'd got so used to the whiff of dragon poo that I hadn't noticed I'd got some on me. "Dude, what is with you today?" Kai whispered. "You're being off the scale weird." But before I had the chance to blame any rogue tortoises, Mr. Firth strode into the classroom. "Ready for the rounders competition, Miss Logan?" he bellowed. "We've been looking forward to this all term. I hope you've had your class working on their skills after last term's netball fiasco." Miss Logan smiled serenely. "I think we're ready for you, Mr. Firth." "Oh, I doubt that, Miss Logan. But I suppose we must admire your optimism, of course. My lot depend on ability more than wishful thinking. Anyway, the match has been scheduled for 2 p.m. I'll be taking Lightning class out for a warm-up beforehand. You're welcome to join us, if you don't think we'll scare the opposition." From the look he gave us as he said the word opposition, it was clear he didn't think we were qualified as a serious threat. He didn't throw back his head like some dastardly villain and scoff outright, but we all knew Mr. Firth thought his class were going to wipe the floor with us, and even Miss Logan didn't look quite so serene after he'd left. I could tell Ted, Kat and Kai wanted to quiz me properly when we were on our way out of class, so I hung on behind, pretending I'd lost my pen under the table. Part of me would have liked to tell them everything, but another part wanted to keep Flicker all to myself. I'd never had anything as cool as Flicker before, and I wasn't sure I was ready to share him. Not yet. But I was beginning to realise that with my terrible lying skills, keeping him a secret might not be as easy as I'd thought. The exploding poo didn't help either. It happened while we were getting into our PE kits. I lifted out my shorts and my heart sank. There were dark scorch marks across the bum, but it was the smell that everyone else noticed first. One of Flicker's dried up poos had exploded, covering every inch of the bag. Liam screwed up his nose. "Ew, miss! Something smells!" He looked in my direction. "And I think it might be coming from over there." Everyone turned to look at me. It was one of those times you wish you had a pop-up black hole in your pocket ready to swallow you up. "I think Tomas has had an accident, miss," he said, pretending to whisper behind his hand but actually saying it loud enough for Class 3 to hear. Class 3 were 2 doors away. Liam was just loving this. I looked at Ted and Kai, but even they were backing away. I stuffed the shorts back inside my bag, cringing. While the rest of the class bundled out towards the field, I was sent to Lost Property to find some spare kit. It wouldn't have been so bad if I'd had a different surname, but as it was like handing Liam a free gift. That's me stuck with Whiffy Liffy for the rest of my life. On Mondays, Grandad picked me up from school, But when he saw me and asked me how my day had been, I just shrugged. I couldn't exactly tell him about the dragon poo incident, and we'd lost so spectacularly in the rounders match, I just wanted to forget the whole day. "I've been thinking about the garden," Grandad said. "We need to work out what's going where. Got to get the right conditions for each plant or they won't thrive. What do you say? Fancy coming over and helping me plan it out?" Can I come tomorrow?" I said, thinking of how I really just wanted to get home to Flicker. As we walked on through the park, Grandad started telling me about how we were going to mark out the garden into areas, but I was too distracted to listen properly. I kept thinking about the burst dragon fruits I'd seen under the tree. Had more dragons really hatched? Could there be 6 dragons hiding out in our town? It seemed so unlikely. I mean, with the amount of mess my one little dragon was wreaking, if there was a whole pack of them out there, surely the news would be full of explosions and unexplained fires. People noticed stuff like that, didn't they? The nagging feeling I'd had during lessons grew even worse the closer I got to home. I started walking more quickly, my brain going over and over everything I'd done that morning. And then it landed on me like a cosmic cowpat. The thing I hadn't done. I grabbed the front door key from Grandad's hand and ran, my panic rising, because the one thing I'd forgotten to do was close my bedroom window. At home, my fingers fumbled with the lock. I raced up the stairs and flung open the door to my bedroom. When I looked inside, it wasn't the shredded curtain or the dragon poo on my computer that I noticed first. It was Flicker, perched on the windowsill, at the open window. For 2 days I'd had the coolest pet in the world. 2 days. And now I was about to lose him. I stood frozen to the spot. "Thomas!" Grandad called, coming up the stairs. "You okay? Your pants on fire or summat?" He paused halfway up and looked through the banister towards my door. I quickly pulled it shut behind me. "Nah, just checking Tom hadn't got in my room again," I said, but my voice was far too squeaky to sound casual. He looked about to quiz me, but then said, "Righto, I guess every man's entitled to his secrets. Hey, Chipstick?" He gave me a wink. "I'm just downstairs if you need me. I'll put the kettle on, shall I?" "Yeah, great, thanks, good idea," I said, already disappearing back into my room. With the bedroom door safely closed, I turned to face the little dragon. He was still on the windowsill, staring up at the sky, his tail flicking from side to side. "Flicker," I whispered desperately. He turned and reached out a hand towards him, but he launched into the air. For a heart-stopping moment, I watched him soar up and away. I'd only ever let him fly inside the house. Now, sensing freedom, he was going to simply fly away and leave me. I raced over to the window, my eyes locked on the little shape flitting about among the leaves of the trees at the end of the garden. After a few agonising minutes, he fluttered towards the tree in next door's garden, the one nearest my window. He perched on a branch, his diamond eyes fixed on me. I held my breath to see what he would do next. I waited, my heart ready to crack, willing him to come back to me, terrified that he wouldn't. Then, stretching his wings, and with his eyes still locked on mine, Flicker flew back in through the window and settled on my shoulder. And it felt like a fireworks display was going off inside me. Chapter 11. Quiet please, no screaming. I knew if I was going to look after Flicker properly, I needed to know more about dragons and more about the dragon fruit tree. Once Mum and Dad were back and Grandad had left, I sat down at the laptop. Just to warn you here, computers and dragon poo really don't mix. I'd managed to clean the smelly stuff off before it ignited, but the heat must have fried the keyboard. I grimaced, closed the lid, and headed downstairs to use Dad's work computer. But I found him staring at a blank screen, muttering things that it was a good job Lolly wasn't near enough to hear. "Thomas!" Mum called. "I'm just taking Charlotte to the library. We won't be long. Why don't you help your dad while we're gone?" I looked at Dad's face, scrunched up in fury, and the screwdriver he was waving threateningly at the back of the laptop, and I backed away. "Actually, Mum, I've got some homework I need to research. The library's just the place I need to be." When she wasn't standing in our school playground at lunchtimes, Mrs. Olive also worked at the village library. She smiled as I walked in. "Lovely to see you, Thomas. And your little friend, of course." For a second I thought she meant Flicker, and my hand shot to my hoodie pocket. But he was still hidden, curled up and fast asleep. Then I realised Mrs. Olive was smiling at Lolly, who was struggling her way out of the buggy. I smiled back, relieved. The village library is tiny really, not like those big town libraries. But you can fill in the request forms and get books sent from any of the other libraries in the area. "Little bit of magic," Mrs. Olive always says. "I can summon your book with one click." I got the feeling Mrs. Olive liked the idea that the world was a little bit magic. "Me wan dragon," Lolly gabbled as she tottered in behind, her hands reaching out for me. Mum looked frazzled, which I guess is what walking half a mile with a demanding 2-year-old does to you. "What do you want now, Charlotte?" Mum said, feebly dangling a series of half-chewed toys, a biscuit and a carton of juice in front of her. Lolly started pulling at my pocket and I tried to push her hands away. "Me want a dragon," she insisted. I backed away, aware that both Mum and Mrs. Olive were staring at me now. "Whatever it is, just give it to her," Mum pleaded, obviously fearing a Lolly meltdown. If I wasn't careful, this was not going to end well. I bent down to my little sister and whispered in her ear, "Flicker's sleeping." It was enough to make her let go of my pocket, but I could feel Flicker stirring at all the tugging, and when Lolly saw my pocket wriggle, she announced, "Me sing lullaby peas." Trying my best to smile sweetly at the adults, I took Lolly's hand and led her down to the far end of the library. Mrs. Olive's husband had made this kid-sized train you could sit in, with carriages full of picture books and cuddly toys. I settled Lolly on a cushion and lifted Flicker out of my pocket. He gave a little shudder and his scales rippled, but he still looked half asleep as he lowered his head and tucked in his wings. Lolly grinned and clapped her hands. "Lullaby, lullaby," she giggled. "Lullaby, bye-bye." I put the little dragon on her lap and he curled up quite happily. She started humming and flicking through the pages of a book. A little ripple of turquoise flashed along Flicker's body from snout to tail. It was like a contented purr in colour. He'd be asleep again in no time. I left them to it. I had research to do. Sadly, there was only one computer, and there was a sign on it saying it was out of order. Mrs. Olive saw me staring at it. "Sorry, Thomas. There was a bit of an incident with a carton of juice last story time. I expect you can find what you need in these, though." She swept her hand towards the shelves of books and smiled. I nodded. It didn't take me long. The mythology section had a whole shelf on dragons. I grabbed an armful of books and headed over to one of the comfy chairs opposite the library desk. Mrs. Olive had roped Mum into helping her sort some new books, and I watched as they disappeared into the stockroom. I gave a quick glance down to the train, where Lolly was babbling away, her hand pointing to the pictures in the book as if she was telling herself, and Flicker, the story. Then I curled up in the chair and leafed through the first book. It was all about different types of dragon. I never knew there were so many. Every country seemed to have its own particular type. Some were snake-like with no wings, and others had 3 heads. In some places they were seen as terrible, fire-breathing monsters, while in others they were actually believed to protect people. My head was so far away in those distant lands that I didn't notice what was happening down the far end of the library. At least, not until the screaming started. I wonder exactly what is happening down the far end of the library. Join me next time to find out exactly what is happening. Thank you for watching, and I'll hope to see you soon. Bye!